Welcome to Byte-sized L&D, your quick, no-nonsense update on the latest in workplace learning. Today, we're diving into the hot debate on return-to-office mandates versus remote work, with insights from GitHub's successful remote-first practices. Discover how they've mastered asynchronous communication and cultivated a strong company culture remotely. All right, let's get straight into it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Byte-sized L&D. I'm your host, Donna, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today.
And I'm Yakov Lasker, ready to dive into a topic that's been on everyone's mind lately: remote work. Or more specifically, the battle between return-to-office mandates, hybrid models, and fully remote approaches.
That's right, Yakov. It seems like every week there's a new headline about some company requiring their employees to come back to the office 3 or 4 days a week. The pendulum is definitely swinging back after the pandemic forced everyone home.
Exactly, Donna. We're seeing this trend where many organizations are pushing for a hybrid model, typically with 3 days in office and 2 days remote. The reasoning often given is around collaboration, culture building, and mentorship.
And I get it, I really do. There's something special about those spontaneous interactions by the coffee machine or brainstorming sessions around a whiteboard. But today, we want to look at a different model that was pioneering remote work long before the pandemic made it mainstream.
GitHub. They've been operating with a distributed workforce from nearly the beginning, way back in 2008. And what's fascinating is that they built their entire company culture around remote collaboration.
Which makes perfect sense when you think about it, right? GitHub's product is literally designed to help developers collaborate on code from anywhere in the world. They're drinking their own champagne, as they say.
Or eating their own dog food, depending on which tech metaphor you prefer. But you're absolutely right. GitHub's foundation in open source meant they were distributed from day one. They actually mirrored the workflows of the open source community, where contributors are rarely in the same place at the same time.
So they had to figure out how to make remote work. And from what I understand, they've been incredibly successful at it. Can you break down some of the key principles that have made GitHub's remote-first approach so effective?
Gladly. The first big one is asynchronous communication. GitHub recognized early on that when people are working across different time zones and schedules, you can't rely on everyone being available for real-time conversations all the time.
That makes sense. It's the you had to be there problem, right? If important discussions or decisions only happen in real-time meetings, you're excluding anyone who couldn't attend.
Precisely. And this is where GitHub really stands out. They've developed a culture where the default mode of communication is asynchronous. Through tools like their own platform, Slack, and collaborative documents. This eliminates that FOMO element and creates a more inclusive environment.
I love that. So instead of having a meeting and then writing up notes afterward, they start with the written communication first?
Yes. And here's a great tip from one of their product managers. Post it where the team can discuss it. Post it before a conversation to give people time to digest and reflect, and afterward to memorialize and surface outcomes.
That's brilliant, because different people process information differently. Some need time to think before responding, while others are quick on their feet. The asynchronous approach levels that playing field.
Absolutely, and GitHub actually emphasizes this focus on outputs rather than inputs. They're not tracking how many hours you spend at your desk. They care about the quality of your contributions.
That mindset shift seems crucial. It's about results, not presence. But I'm curious, how do they handle those situations where real-time collaboration is actually beneficial, like brainstorming sessions or providing feedback?
Great question. They're not anti-synchronous communication. They just use it intentionally. For high-fidelity discussions like design feedback or brainstorming, they do use video calls. But there's a fascinating cultural norm they've developed. They recommend turning on your camera to maintain that human connection.
That makes a huge difference. I've been on too many calls where everyone has their camera off, and it feels so impersonal.
Right? And GitHub has these cultural guidelines for those synchronous moments. One interesting one is don't ping, just ask. Instead of sending a message like, "Hey, do you have a sec?" and waiting for a response, they encourage people to just ask their question outright.
Oh, I'm guilty of the "hey, got a minute" approach. But I see how that defeats the purpose of asynchronous communication. It forces the other person to respond before they even know what you need.
Exactly. It's a small change but makes a big difference in respecting people's time and focus. Another principle they follow is using public channels instead of direct messages whenever possible.
Why is that important?
Two reasons. First, someone else in the channel might know the answer and can respond immediately. Second, it creates a public record of that knowledge for others who might have the same question in the future.
That's so smart. It's like they're building a searchable knowledge base through their everyday communications. But I wonder, what about company culture? That's often cited as the main reason for bringing people back to the office. How does GitHub maintain a strong culture with a distributed workforce?
That's where they've really innovated. They focus intensely on creating a sense of belonging, regardless of location. One fascinating aspect is that they have a diversity and inclusion interview with every external hire at every level.
Wait, really? What does that entail?
An unbiased person, not on the hiring team, discusses the candidate's experiences with inclusive environments. It sets expectations for GitHub's culture of acceptance and diversity right from the start.
That's remarkable. They're embedding their values into the hiring process itself. What other cultural elements have they established?
They've created what they call Finding Your People channels, places where employees can connect based on shared interests like hobbies or lifestyle preferences. This helps combat that sense of isolation that can come with remote work.
I've heard that loneliness is often cited as the biggest downside of working remotely. How does GitHub address that?
Interestingly, one of their employees mentioned never feeling lonely at GitHub, which they found fascinating given that reputation. The clear communication channels and those interest-based connections keep people engaged and valued.
That's powerful. And what about career growth? Another common concern is that remote workers get overlooked for promotions or important projects.
GitHub has explicitly focused on ensuring employees can grow their careers. Regardless of location, their leadership team includes many remote workers, which sends a powerful message that you don't need to be in an office to advance.
It sounds like they've really thought through all the typical objections to remote work and developed systems to address them. Are there any other unique aspects of their approach?
One that really stands out is their use of emojis and GIFs in professional communication. They recognize that when you're not face-to-face, you need other ways to convey tone and emotion.
That's so true. It's easy to misinterpret written communication without those visual cues.
Exactly. They embrace the idea that a simple emoji can efficiently express emotions that might take several sentences to convey in text. As they say at GitHub, mind your words, they're important.
I'm also curious about their physical setup. Do they have any offices, or is everyone truly remote?
They do maintain a small office in San Francisco, but the majority of their workforce is distributed, and they've made significant investments in ensuring the remote experience is equitable. They provide resources for home office setups, co-working space allowances, and equipment like good microphones and lighting.
That investment seems crucial. It shows that remote work isn't just a cost-saving measure for them. They're reallocating those office expenses to support their distributed workforce.
Absolutely, and one of their employees mentioned having a world clock displaying all the time zones their team works in, which helps them be more considerate about when they schedule communications.
That's such a simple but thoughtful touch. It all comes back to building consideration and intentionality into their workflows. So, given what we've learned about GitHub's approach, how do you think other companies should be thinking about remote work today?
I think the key takeaway is that remote work can be incredibly successful, but it requires intentional design of your processes, tools, and culture. It's not enough to just send people home with laptops and expect everything to work the same way it did in the office.
Right. It seems like GitHub didn't just adapt office practices to remote settings. They fundamentally reimagined how work gets done.
That's a perfect way to put it. And while the hybrid model that many companies are moving toward might be the right balance for some organizations, I think they could still learn a lot from GitHub's principles around asynchronous communication and creating inclusive processes.
What would be your top 3 recommendations for companies that want to create more effective remote or hybrid environments?
First, establish clear norms around communication, when to use synchronous versus asynchronous channels, and how to document decisions. Second, invest in the right tools and home office setups for your team. And third, actively build culture through intentional connection points rather than relying on physical proximity.
Those are excellent recommendations. I'd add that leadership needs to model these behaviors too. If executives are always in the office while everyone else is remote, you're creating an implicit hierarchy.
Spot on. GitHub has many senior leaders who work remotely, which sends a powerful message that it's a legitimate and respected way to work.
As we wrap up, I think it's worth noting that GitHub was acquired by Microsoft in 2018 for $7.5 billion, which certainly validates their approach to building a company. They've proven that a remote-first model can scale successfully.
Absolutely, and while the return-to-office trend is real, I believe we'll see more companies adopting elements of GitHub's model as they recognize the benefits of accessing talent regardless of location and creating more inclusive work environments.
Well, listeners, we hope this deep dive into GitHub's remote-first approach has given you some food for thought about your own organization's work model. Whether you're fully remote, hybrid, or office-based, there are valuable lessons here about intentional communication and building culture beyond physical spaces.
And remember, the best approach is the one that works for your specific team and business needs. GitHub's model evolved to support their unique product and community. The key is thoughtful design, rather than defaulting to what's always been done.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Byte-sized L&D. I'm Donna.
And I'm Yakov Lasker. That's all for today. Remember, GitHub's success with a remote-first model shows the power of designing work models that prioritize asynchronous communication and inclusive practices. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues so they can also stay updated on the latest news and gain powerful insights. Stay tuned for more updates.